I'm Jeff Serafini, Purchasing Manager, Potomac Floral Wholesale. I'd like to talk just briefly on a small aspect of flower economics. Generally in life, when you're making decisions on what to buy, if you pay more, you would think you will get more. Either more quality, more quantity, something that meets a raised expectation. In the flower world, for many varieties of flowers, it's the exact opposite. And why would this be? You have to remember that from the beginning, all flowers in our industry started out as flowers in nature. And that means they have a season. And the hundreds of millions of dollars that are invested in getting us what we want, when we want, and when you invest $100 million to get what you want, when you want, you're not really staying in tune with the season. So, lilac can happen anytime from October through to April. But when is the best time to buy lilac? When you see it blooming on the highway near your location. That's when you'll get the most, the freshest, the best quality, and the best value. All the other times of the year, all of that money is being invested to meet a demand, but it is expensive to do so. And it costs to transport it. So that brings us to the idea of regional and local flowers. And some of the differences in local flowers are what you might expect, and some of them are quite subtle. One aspect of local flowers versus flowers that get shipped, either imported or trucked, is that generally you have growers who are creating uniform bunches. It's something that they're controlling the growing on, and in general they'll keep that bunch with an exact stem count. So there'll be 10 stems in a bunch of Asclepia now. But in 3 weeks, when local Asclepia comes, it'll be 12, 15, 20, but certainly more than 10. Yarrow is another example of that flower. This is local yarrow. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 23 stems from local farms that will generally bunch it according to the hand method. Like, this is a handful, that's a bunch. Another aspect of flowers close to your location is that you may be able to get flowers that just don't transport well at all. The Cloud series of larkspur, which is a single larkspur, is a beautiful and delicate flower. But it is difficult to transport. It doesn't do well if it gets dry, so flying it in boxes is not a good solution. And it doesn't do well if it's tightly packed, so even trucking in water may not be a solution. We carry these varieties, the Cloud variety in white and in blue, only when our local farms are in season with it. And when their season is done, so are we. Baptisia is a plant that gives you a blue flower, a little bit like an aconitum or a monkshood, but it's not something that ships well. And because it doesn't ship particularly well, there's not a lot of people who know about it unless they're growing it in their garden or happen to be near a local grower. And what we've learned is that not only is the Baptisia flower itself interesting, but the foliage is interesting. And the plants actually produce a great deal of foliage. So when this is on crop locally, everyone in our area is using Baptisia foliage as an alternative foliage for their arrangements. And again, not a 10 stem count, handful. You get quite a bit of value, quite a bit of space. and it's very affordable. Traditional flowers have their seasons just beginning locally. Hydrangeas have been blooming and are now strong enough that you can cut them and transport them not great distances, but locally. They come in water, they stay in water until we pack them, and it's a minimal change from what happens harvest to your store. The classic marigold, grown all over the United States. Very difficult to import actually, because the foliage, if it gets too cold, changes color and doesn't do well. But from California's west coast to the east coast, marigold growers are coming into their crop right now in June. Lilac, of course. Aramuris, northwest United States. It also grows in Europe, but is much more expensive to import because of the freight expense, whereas domestic freight is much more affordable, and you can get the 4-foot size or an available 5-foot size. Lastly, this is allium, both imported and locally grown. Now, some of the color difference is because of the variety, but most of it is because one is greenhouse grown and shipped in from outside of the country. The other is locally grown, left in the field longer to pick up that intensity of the direct sun. So you have a difference in the look of the flower just by virtue of the fact that it was grown locally, outdoors grown. I'm Jeff Serafini, Purchasing Manager, Potomac Floral Wholesale.